Hello, Tungsten Miner here. And you might well ask, where on Earth is here? And you'd be wrong, because this is not the Earth. There's the Earth, way up there. I am on the Moon. I have, of course, been playing with GalacticCraft and have done all the necessary things, and there's quite a few of them, to make my way to the Moon in safety. Of course, that's a lot of work, and my base is now a little ways away, and of course my home is quite a lot further away. So I'm going to talk in this video about how I got from there to here. So first I'm going to teleport back to my base and start showing you through all of the equipment and things you need to get here. I am now standing in my GalacticCraft building, which is one of the several outbuildings near my old house. And you're seeing in front of me a Tier 1 rocket sitting on its rocket launch pad with its fuel loader right next to it. And down below you can see the oxygen compressor, oxygen collector, my NASA workbench, and of course all the power pipes and things that are used to power this stuff up. So let's take these things one at a time. In order to get started building your first rocket, you're going to need one of these NASA workbenches. So let's take a look quickly at what that involves. Okay, so you're going to need some of these compressed steel plates, an advanced wafer, levers, redstone, all the other stuff is pretty easy to come by. But how on earth do you get these compressed steel plates and advanced wafers? Well, to answer that question, I'm going to have to go back up to my machine room, so I'll meet you there. I am now looking at what is probably the first thing you're going to wind up making for GalacticCraft, which is just a plain old coal-fired compressor, or in my case, wood bamboo pole-fired, some kind of furnace fuel-fired compressor. And in order to use this thing, you take, let's see, can I get any recipes? No, I guess not. You take whatever ingots you're trying to compress, and usually it's a pair of them. So 2 iron ingots would get you compressed iron, 2 steel ingots, compressed steel, 2 tin ingots will get you compressed tin, whatever it is your recipe requires. And then you drop some coal in here, and that will progress and give you the compressed whatever it was. So the compressor itself is that guy. You need an anvil of some kind, some aluminum, copper, and one of these basic wafers. To make that guy, you're going to need a different machine. So I lied. That's not the first machine you need. You need one of these things, a circuit fabricator first. So let's take a look at that. Whoops, there we go. Yeah. This is some aluminum wire, which is just aluminum wrapped with any kind of wool, some more aluminum, levers, buttons, and a furnace, which will get you a circuit fabricator. This guy works by taking any kind of power, RF power, diamond here, silicon here, which is let's see, in the standard settings is going to appear very, very low, almost at bedrock. In my mod pack, it appears anywhere buried in sandstone. Redstone here, and some kind of control here. And so the kinds of things you can do, yeah, here we go. So here's a good example. The basic circuit is all of these things with a redstone torch. The advanced wafer uses a redstone repeater, and I think that's kind of all of the recipes that use this thing. But of course, in order to make any of the more advanced machines, you got to start here because you need those circuits in order to even get started. So once you've made the circuit fabricator, that allows you to make the compressor. Once you've made the compressor, you can make the electric compressor, which really does exactly the same thing, except it uses power to do the compressing instead of coal. And so you just need the advanced wafer, bronze, steel, anvil. So it's almost the same recipe, except you're going to use some of the compressed stuff itself. And obviously I've got power going on here. The thing with these machines, though, is that they require power on a specific side. Unlike a lot of, say, the carpentry machines or the thermal expansion machines, you've got to line them up. So this green dot is where power comes in to this particular machine. And you can see this one's got the same green dot. And no other sides have that dot, so you really do have to line them up properly. Once you've got your compressor, though, you can start making some of the equipment. Now, taking a trip to the moon is easy. Not dying as soon as you get there is actually a little bit harder. Because in addition to the kinds of things that you're going to need to bring along on a standard adventure, you're also going to need to bring along a lot of this extra equipment. Here, for example, is the setup you need minus that piece and minus that piece, that you need to have oxygen when you're out on the surface of the moon. Of course, when you first arrive, you've got no shelter, you've got no house, there's nowhere that has any oxygen, so you have to make all this stuff and bring it with you. This oxygen mask is just glass around an iron helmet. The oxygen gear is some of these oxygen pipes, which is just glass panes with an oxygen concentrator. That's got this whole recipe with compressed tin and compressed steel and a tin canister. That's these things. This oxygen vent is more compressed metal. You're getting the idea that this is a very resource-intensive mod? Well, it totally is. I'm going to stop going through all of the recipes for things because there are so many recipes and many layers deep of them. And it can get to be very complicated. So get yourself NEI, make sure it's in your mod pack. You can also go to my website, which is crafting-guide.com. It has support for GalacticCraft, and it will give you plans for how you build all this step by step, along with all the materials, which makes all of this a lot easier. No matter how many times I've gone through GalacticCraft stuff, I keep going back to my own site in order to get these recipes and whatnot all straightened out in a nice plan. So I'm going to start just going through what do you need to bring? What do you need to do? And there's actually a checklist that comes with the GalacticCraft documentation, so you can go find the wiki and go through it. Obviously, you're going to need to bring all the normal stuff. So you want armor, you want food, you want weapons. But in addition to that, you need all of this oxygen gear. So you need the mask, you need the oxygen gear itself, and you need these tanks. And these tanks allow you to store oxygen. And there's a couple of different kinds of tanks. There's these lightweight tanks which store 900 units, whatever a unit is, 1,800 units, and 2,700 units in the larger ones. And I recommend you just go straight to the larger ones. It will definitely be worthwhile. They're not that much more expensive, and you can last a whole lot longer on the surface. And I highly recommend that you make 2 of them. Once you get your oxygen stuff set up, you can fill one while you're wearing the other and not croak while you're on the surface of the moon. Another thing you'll want to bring is this parachute. This doesn't actually come in handy on the moon, but it does come in handy when you come back again. So I'll talk about that in a bit. And this frequency module. When you go to the moon, of course, there's no oxygen on the surface of the moon, and you need air to transmit sound. So if a creeper or other nasty thing is creeping up on you, you won't notice it until much too late unless you have one of these things equipped, in which case all the normal sounds come back again. Plus you get a cool little satellite on your, or satellite dish on your helmet. And all of these things add to your character's appearance. This line of items over here is actually for when you go to Mars, because Mars is so cold, you need some thermal protection to keep you warm, and that's what this is all about. I haven't gone there yet, so I don't have a set of those. Maybe at some point I'll make a video about going to Mars, and we can talk about that. Okay, so that's the gear you have to have on you in order to go. In order to fill up the oxygen tanks and build your rocket and whatnot, you need a lot of the other equipment that I was talking about down in my other room. So I'm going to head back over there. Back in my GalacticCraft building, I'm now looking at my oxygen collector and oxygen compressor. These 2 machines are what allow you to fill up your oxygen tanks. You can see the little kind of purpley, bluey dots that are kind of getting sucked into the collector. This machine with power, and again, just like the other machines, you have to put power on a certain side of the machine. It's going to collect ambient oxygen. On Earth, that's not so hard. There's plenty of oxygen floating around. You just drop it down, give it power, that's it. Nothing else to do. On the moon, you can still use one of these, but you have to bring some stuff to create the oxygen in the first place. So when we go up to the moon, I'll talk about what that actually looks like. Over here, I've got some oxygen pipe, and you can see that side with the blue with the red dot in the middle. That's going to be outputting oxygen. Blue circle with the green dot is accepting oxygen. And so I've got my oxygen pipe that allows me to move the oxygen from one machine to the other machine. I always stack these things up because they happen to have the oxygen ports on the same side, and they happen to have the power ports on the same side, so it's convenient. But you don't necessarily have to do that. You can have the oxygen pipe go as far as you want. The compressor then, actually, let me grab my tank, which I think, yeah, is got a little bit of oxygen used. So in here, you can put tanks in here to supply oxygen, you can put batteries here to supply power, or you can do what I've done and have pipes and pipes to deliver both. This shows you the store of oxygen and power that are actually in the machine, and this is telling me, hey, buddy, there's no oxygen tank in the machine. So I'm going to drop my oxygen tank in here, and you can see it's slowly replenishing the supply of oxygen in this tank. And now that it's full, it says, uh-oh, tank is full. So I'll drop the other one in there. And once that one gets full, all set. So this is how you get your oxygen tanks full so that when you go, you've got some oxygen ready for you when you arrive at the surface. You can only stay for so long as you've got oxygen. So if you're not planning on setting up a moon base right away, then you might want to bring some extra tanks so that you don't have to spend all the time, energy, and fuel, especially, to get to the moon and then have to turn around and come right back again. The next thing you need is one of these NASA workbenches. And this spidery looking guy is how you make your rockets. So a tier 1 rocket is made by basically using this kind of special crafting table. Let's take a look, though, at the actual recipe here. I know I said I wasn't going to do recipes, but this one's actually kind of important. Here we are, tier 1 rocket. You're going to take all of these parts and lay them out in the NASA workbench, and that's what's going to get you your rocket. So it works a lot like any other kind of crafting table, except you need this special crafting table to do it. The other thing to consider is you can actually have you have an inventory, you have a cargo hold, if you want, on your rocket. And that's sized based upon how many chests you put in here. Compared to the rest of the stuff, chests are ridiculously cheap. So there's no reason at all not to just throw 3 of them on there and make yourself a rocket with as much carrying capacity as you possibly can get. These heavy-duty plates, lots of work on the compressor. That's kind of all it comes down to. Is rocket fins are lots of plates. Nose cones are lots of plates. You're going to need stacks and stacks of different kinds of metal, stacks and stacks, in order to build your rocket. So this is a very much late game sort of activity. Okay, so I talked about your basic stuff, food, weapons, armor. I've talked about your oxygen gear. I've talked about your radio so that you can hear. I've talked about how do you fill up your oxygen gear. Next, let's talk about fueling your rocket. Over here, I've got a fuel loader. This is yet another machine that you need to build, and it's got a complicated recipe, so you can go look that up. And then you want to load it with fuel. This is BuildCraft fuel, which you can create in a couple of different ways. Obviously, you can make it using the normal BuildCraft technique, using a BuildCraft refinery. GalacticCraft has its own refinery that it brings along, and I presume it works basically the same way, right? But you also can use PneumaticCraft gasoline. And considering that I've already got a big setup for converting oil to gasoline and all the other kind of different fractions of oil, that's what I wind up using. So I just take my tank of gasoline and pop it onto the bottom down there, and that pumps the gasoline out, fills up the loader, which ultimately fills up the rocket. So if I right-click on this rocket, I've now mounted the rocket. And you can see I've got some controls. I can press the space bar to launch. I can press A and D to turn left and right, and W and S to go up and down. I can press I to look at my inventory. I'm not quite ready to launch yet, so I'm going to avoid hitting space, and so the countdown timer stays at 20. And my little gauge of how high I am over on the left-hand side is going to stay put firmly on the ground. But if I look at my inventory by pressing I, you can see my fuel tank is all filled up, which is good. And all of this inventory is cargo space of things that I can bring to the moon, in addition to the stuff that I've actually got in my actual inventory. So just as an example, I happen to have killed a creeper and a spider as I was getting ready to start the video. So I'm going to drop that into my rocket's inventory. I'm going to hop out, because I don't actually want to go anywhere quite yet, and talk about the launch pad. So the launch pad is what you need to have. It's a multi-block structure that's 3 by 3 of these little launch pad objects. The recipe for which is, of course, in NEI, and is actually pretty easy to make. You want your fuel loader right next to it, and you'll notice the fuel loader has 2 ports, the same square green port for power that all the other machines have, and it has a circular yellow port for fuel. The fuel loader will connect to the rocket launch pad on any side at all, so it behooves you to orient it so you can pipe in your fuel. Because let me tell you, getting all the fuel in here by using the fuel canisters, which is the only other way you can do this, fuel canister, here we are, is kind of a nuisance. They don't hold very much, and you have to drop a bunch in at a time, or you have to drop them in one at a time. And yeah, it's kind of a nuisance. So I wouldn't bother about that. Definitely get yourself some pipes and set it up so that the pipes can actually connect to that port. So you want to orient your fuel loader correctly. Once you've gotten that, you want to bring along a parachute for when you come back. And I'll take a trip and come back again so you can see that in use. But when you're coming back again, you basically just get dropped at altitude like 250 or something. And if you don't have a parachute, then, well, you know what happens when you drop from a high place in Minecraft. It's not pretty. This building is my launch building, and so I've actually gone to a little bit of trouble to make it sort of realistic. I've got a launch door that I can open and close with a regular switch. And if I hop out here, you can see how this works. So the sides are basalt microblocks. Technical block pillars are along the edges, and the technical block are blocks that come from chisel, which you make with this recipe, and then you can toss them into the chisel itself and come up with all these sort of, you know, technical patterns of fans and circuits and pipes and vents and all sorts of crazy stuff. Really good for making these more high-tech builds. And at the corners here, I've actually got glowstone nooks. Just teeny tiny, the little bittiest piece of glowstone you can get. But they still have their ability to cast light. The other thing I've got here are these Tinker's Mechworks drawbridges. I've got a camouflage block that's just a technical sturdy block, otherwise they look like this. And inside I've added 5 technical blocks with a certain pattern. Now if I take out some of the blocks from the inventory there and close the door, you can see, of course, this one doesn't quite go the distance. So the drawbridge is basically a block that's going to place and remove whatever blocks are in its inventory in whatever direction it happens to be facing. So if I take this out again, you can see that dark hole is the direction that the blocks are going to get spit out, and none of the other sides have that hole, so you can always tell where it's going to go and place it accordingly. And that's how I make this little kind of sliding door that allows me to open and close things. It is getting dark, and I can see the moon is starting to rise. You know, I always forget. You can look at the moon from the overworld, and tell whether it's going to be daytime or nighttime on the moon by the phase of the moon. So unlike the overworld where days go by every, 7 minutes or something, on the lunar surface, the days go by the phases of the moon, which of course take a whole lot longer. So the day-night cycle there is quite a bit different from what it is on the overworld. And if you go up there and it's nighttime, there are hordes and hordes and hordes of monsters. Let me actually just go take a second here and look up the phase chart. All right, here I am on the GalacticCraft wiki, and I'm looking at this diagram that shows you the various phases of the moons and whether it's daytime or nighttime. So looking at my Minecraft here, I can see, okay, that looks like a new moon. And I come back to the wiki and I say new moon, here we are. So it's just about sunset. So it's nighttime here, I guess. 5, 6. Yeah, so it's just newly sunset, or just past sunset. So it's just now nighttime on the moon. And I'm going to have to wait several days, so day on the overworld side, for the moon to get back to a full moon, which is the beginning of the day cycle on the moon. So basically, full moon is sunrise, new moon is sunset, as far as the moon is concerned. So if I go up there, it's going to be dark, and there's going to be mobs everywhere, and it will be a massive, massive problem. You do not want to land on the moon in the middle of the lunar night. You will quickly get overwhelmed, and that will be the end of you. So very important to check your lunar chart before you make your journey, so that you land during the lunar day, and everything is easy to get going and set up your base. So next time I will launch, and we'll talk about setting up a lunar base and traveling and getting back to Earth and all of that stuff. So if you like this video, hit the like button. If you want to know when that next one's coming out, hit the subscribe button, and I will talk to you later.